The definition of United States does not include the 48 states of the Union. So we're going to get into that as part of this whole discussion, right? You can literally type it into Google, is state of California within the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of the national government? No.
No. Oh, my God. The state of California is not within the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of the national government. So says AI overview from Google. California has ceded some of its jurisdiction to the federal government, but it retains other rights. I'm sure that applies to almost every state, right?
Except Hawaii and Alaska.
Except Hawaii and Alaska. Wow.
And then obviously the U.S. territories and insular possessions. So if you type in U.S. territories into Google, and then you go to the Wikipedia article. It's a very good article, by the way.
Nice.
It says here, territories of the United States are sub-national administrative divisions and dependent territories overseen by the federal government of the United States. The American territories differ from the U.S. states and Indian reservations in that they are not sovereign entities.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm very excited and honored to be joined by Brandon Joe Williams. Let me tell you about this incredible guy, what he's been up to. He's a seasoned author, he's a securities attorney, and a foreign national at the Amnesty Coalition. He brings a wealth of experience and insight to his legal practice. As a lawyer at Williams & Williams Law Group, Brandon is dedicated to providing comprehensive legal services to his clients. He brings a unique perspective rooted in experience and offers invaluable guidance and expertise in various legal matters. And when you hear what we're going to talk about, you're definitely going to want to stick around. So, Brandon, without further ado, thank you so much for beaming in, brother.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Absolutely, man. So, let me be upfront with you even more than I have already. I've seen your podcasts with my friend Alec, who I know you know very well.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and he was here a few weeks ago. We had an epic conversation, so I just have a lot of admiration for your mission to educate and empower Americans, and the way you share your knowledge in common law is it's awesome. So I know these concepts are going to really resonate with a lot of my audience. And I'm hoping you can walk us through the whole idea of how and why a person might want to become a sovereign citizen, and what that means. And I've seen a lot of these videos going around talking about how, our birth certificate isn't what you think it is, and why the government always lists our names in all caps. And so I would love to know what is really going on, and I know you can shed some light on it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we don't typically use the word sovereign citizen too much. That word has been kind of hijacked. Congress actually called us sovereign citizens. Everybody in America, way back in like 1925 or something, they said that we're all the individual citizens of the states of the Union are all sovereign citizens, right? So there's some people trying to take back the term. I don't really use it necessarily because the word sovereign and the word citizen are both independently relative terms, right? So sovereign to what, or citizen of what, right? So
yeah,
saying sovereign citizen together in two different words without any sort of like clarifying aspects to it doesn't really make any sense, because it would be sovereign from,
yeah.
But America, but yet a citizen of what, right? Like,
right,
would be that would be kind of like the full sentence as to what it is and kind of how it works. This whole sovereign citizen thing is just, it's an excuse that a lot of law enforcement and stuff has kind of created to just poo-poo people who are looking at what their rights are.
Right.
Really, I mean,
that doesn't surprise me. But you what I'm kind of referring to, the liberty, at least the set of liberties that comes with this knowledge if it's applied in all its facets.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, so I will just get rolling then. We can just kind of get started on the presentation, and I can kind of show you. I just did a screen share.
Okay.
the first thing I like to go over on these shows is to start walking down the path of what is the United States, what is a citizen, and what is a United States citizen. And most people who are brand new to this information will think, well, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. But in fact, you know, I could do a whole show easily. I think I was on the Cult of Conspiracy podcast recently. We did 4.5 hours.
Wow.
Just on those 3 subjects. We went into some other things a little bit, but really it was just those 3 was pretty much it.
I'm sure, yeah. There's a lot to unpack.
4.5 hours. So we'll just start at the beginning here, and we'll just go through whatever we can, whatever time permits, and then we'll just go from there. But the first thing we're going to go into is, this is one of my favorite cases in terms of just clarity as to what we're looking at, without getting into anything very complicated or anything very crazy right out the gate, right? Mm-hmm. So if we go to Google and we type in the Slaughterhouse Cases, we see here that the Slaughterhouse Cases, let's see here.
Series of Supreme Court cases.
This one here. The Slaughterhouse Cases was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision which ruled that the Privileges or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution only protects the legal rights that are associated with federal U.S. citizenship, not those that pertain to state citizenship. So this is a case we're going to be getting into more as we go. Basically, the whole point of what I'm trying to show you here is that there's 2 major types of citizenship, and no one's aware of any of this anywhere. And that's kind of like what my platform is, to bring awareness of the 2 major types of citizenship, right? Mm-hmm. So the U.S. citizen category, which is the same thing as saying the federal U.S. citizenship category,
right?
We're going to read about what that category is for. Most people are walking around saying that they are a U.S. citizen. I'm going to be explaining now what that means. Okay. So this is a quote from Ellen R. Van Valkenburg versus Albert Brown, 43 Cal 43, California Supreme Court, 1872. No white person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction, or born without those limits and subsequently naturalized under their laws, owes the status of citizenship to the recent amendments to the federal Constitution. The history and aim of the 14th Amendment is well known, and the purpose had in view in its adoption well understood. That purpose was to confer the status of citizenship upon a numerous class of persons domiciled within the limits of the United States, who could not be brought within the operation of the naturalization laws because native born, and whose birth, though native, had at the same time left them without the status of citizenship. These persons were not white persons, but were in the main persons of African descent who had been held in slavery in this country, or, if having themselves never been held in slavery, they were the native-born descendants of slaves. Prior to the adoption of the 14th Amendment, it was settled that neither slaves nor those who had been such, nor the descendants of these, though native and free-born, were capable of becoming citizens of the United States. That case is the well-known Dred Scott v. Sanford case. The 13th Amendment, though conferring the boon, which means benefit, of freedom upon native-born persons of African blood, had yet left them under an insuperable, which means unable to be overcome, bar as to citizenship. And it was mainly to remedy this condition that the 14th Amendment was adopted. So we're going to get into this more and more as we go. We've already established there's a state citizen and there's a federal citizen. The federal citizen category is called the U.S. citizen. White people can't be U.S. citizens.
Wow.
And the people who are U.S. citizens are people who were released from slavery through the 13th Amendment, through conferring the benefit of freedom upon native-born persons of African blood, and then they didn't have a citizenship So it was a bit of a problem. They're free, but they're basically stateless.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it had left them under an insuperable bar as to citizenship. And then the 14th, and it was mainly to remedy this condition that the 14th Amendment was adopted. So the U.S. citizen category is based off the 14th Amendment. The U.S. citizen category was specifically a special kind of citizenship that was created specifically for these people.
Wow.
And
basically slaves and descendants of slaves.
Correct. And you start going down that rabbit hole more and more and more. Slaves were property. No
Right.
different than this TV remote, no different than this bottle, no different than this gum container. Okay?
Yeah.
So so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to this. I like this quote because it gives you everything on like a nice little pill. It's a nice place to start. It doesn't require me to roll into a whole lot of things. It's sort of like a wham bam real fast, right?
It's a little shocking, yeah. It's a great
but if
one
we
to
go
start.
to the big dog is the Slaughterhouse Cases. The Slaughterhouse Cases is where all this happened. The Slaughterhouse Cases is where all this occurred. The Slaughterhouse Cases is where all this information is at. This is also the first case I showed you was California Supreme Court. This one is the U.S. Supreme Court, so it's applicable everywhere. This is the big dog of the big dogs. So you go to Google Scholar, you type Slaughterhouse Cases, 83 U.S. 36. Supreme Court, 1873. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these quotes from here and we're going to plug them in here and I'm going to read them to you straight off the original material, right?
Okay.
So this whole thing about the first article of the United States, the first section of the 14th article, people have been arguing about what the 14th Amendment is talking about for literally since 1871. This case explains to you in very simple, non-legalese terms what they're talking about in the 14th Amendment. So this is actually right here. We're about ready to read the exact paragraph of the exact court case that essentially birthed the U.S. citizen category. So the guy who's speaking here, his name is Justice Samuel Freeman Miller is the guy talking. So we can get a picture of what he looks like. He looks like this.
For my listeners, he looks like a very chubby, I was going to say what actor is that? I can't remember the actor's name. I worked with him once. He's a chubby white guy with a permanent frown, it seems.
Kind of a Churchill-looking guy, right?
Yeah, but with hair, yeah.
Yeah, kind of a Churchill-looking guy, kind of a serious-looking dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was born in Richmond, Kentucky in 1816. He received a medical degree from Pennsylvania University in 1838, studying law while he worked as a doctor for over 10 years. He was admitted to the bar to practice in 1847. And then he left the state and moved to Iowa because of his emancipationist views on slavery. He supported Abraham Lincoln's candidacy for the presidency in 1860. He was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Lincoln in 1862 and served until his death in 1890. During his service on the court in the Civil War years, Miller supported President Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus and the trials by military commission. And then he was the guy who is speaking in this this case. Okay, so he's the one talking. So here we go. The first section of the 14th article, to which our attention is more specifically invited, opens with a definition of citizenship. Not only citizenship of the United States, but citizenship of the states. No such definition was previously found in the Constitution, nor had any attempt been made to define it by act of Congress. It had been the occasion of much discussion in the courts, by the executive departments, and in the public journals. It had been said by eminent judges that no man was a citizen of the United States except as he was a citizen of one of the states comprising the Union. Those, therefore, who had been born and resided always in the District of Columbia or in the territories, though within the United States, were not citizens. Whether this proposition was sound or not had never been judicially decided, But it had been held by this court in the celebrated Dred Scott case only a few years before the outbreak of the Civil War that a man of African descent, whether a slave or not, was not and could not be a citizen of a state or of the United States. This decision, while it meant the condemnation of some of the ablest statesmen and constitutional lawyers of the country, had never been overruled. And if it was to be accepted as a constitutional limitation of the right of citizenship, then all the Negro race who had recently been made free men were still not only not citizens, but were incapable of becoming so by anything short of an amendment to the Constitution.
Wow.
To remove this difficulty primarily and to establish a clear and comprehensive definition of citizenship, which should declare what should constitute citizenship of the United States and also citizenship of a state, the first clause of the first section was framed. And then here's the quote that we always see that people have been arguing about since 1871. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, we have to go pretty far in this conversation to really piece this whole thing together. It takes about 2 or 3 hours to get through everything that a person has to understand in order to understand what the sentence means, which is the first line of the 14th Amendment. Wow. The first thing we've already figured out, if we were to just spend our entire time on this show just breaking down this one sentence, it'll be plenty life-changing for everyone listening. So it says here, all persons. So we already have the definition of the word persons. The word persons, as used in the first line of the 14th Amendment, would be slaves of African descent who had been released from slavery through the 13th Amendment, but had no citizenship yet, and it was an issue. That's the definition of the word persons.
Damn.
Born or naturalized in the United States. Now we have to get into a whole long thing to figure out what the United States is. Samuel Miller already gave us a hint as to where it is. Most people probably didn't even notice it. He says the hint right here. Therefore, who had been born and resided always in the District of Columbia or in the territories.
Not the states.
Well, that's
What the
definition of United States does not include the 48 states of the Union. So we're going to get into that as part of this whole discussion, right? So if I were to just give you the answer to what is the definition of United States, the answer to the definition of where is the definition of United States would be the District of Columbia and the District of Columbia's U.S. territories and insular possessions, which we're going to get into more as we get into this. There are 5 inhabited and 5 uninhabited territories and possessions. The 5 inhabited possessions are Guam, American Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Northern Mariana Islands, and Puerto Rico. And we can see that by going to U.S. territories. And Wikipedia has a great article on this. But if we wanted to just not get into all that, and if I just wanted to keep this kind of sped up, 5 territories. There are more. There are uninhabited, incorporated, unincorporated islands that have nobody there. There's more to this conversation.
Yeah.
But if we want to keep it simple in terms of what could be relevant to anyone, really ever, there's 5 of them. American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And then if you go to insular possessions, it's pretty much the same thing. You can even see it straight from the Code of Federal Regulations, 19 CFR 7.2. Guam, American Samoa, Wake Island, Midway Islands, Johnson Atoll, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam. You know, we're starting. Yeah. It's a lot of the same stuff. Some of these, they're referring some of these, like for example, Wake Island, Midway Island, Johnston Atoll. These are uninhabited islands.
Yeah.
But you can see they're naming everything here, right? So that's what they're talking about when they say the term United States. You can even see that in so many places. You can see it in the tax code. You can see it all over the place, right? You can see it in the definitions behind the passport, Title 8. You can see it here. This is actually a section where I was suing the government in state court, and they removed the case from state court to federal court using 28 U.S.C. 1442. And it says here, a civil action or criminal prosecution that is commenced in a state court and is against or directed towards the United States, any agency thereof, or any officer can be removed from a state court to a federal court. But they have a special definition for the term state court. Very telling. The term state court includes the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, a court of a United States territory or insular possession, and a tribal court.
A tribal court?
So federally registered tribal lands are essentially also a U.S. territory or insular possession.
I see, okay.
But it would have to be federally registered for it to be underneath that classification. If it's not federally registered, then it wouldn't be classified as a United States territory or insular possession.
Okay. I'm just wondering why they're using these outlying as the basis for their definition, why they're leaving out the actual states and what they're fucking. I'm sure that it involves skullduggery and deception, and that's why they have done it this way. But
so it's been this way forever. It's been this way since 1871. The definition of the term United States does not include the 48 states of the Union. It does include Alaska and Hawaii.
Because they were territories, right?
If you think they're possessions. If you think of the 50 states of the Union and then just delete Hawaii and Alaska, you've got 48 left. Those are 48 sovereign countries.
Wow.
It's just like
wow.
It's just like Europe. We operate just like the European Union. It's just no one knows it. That's the problem. So California and Arizona are two entirely separate countries. It's like if we were to go to Google Maps and we were to go to, let's fly over to Europe, okay? And where's Europe? Right here. We're going to go and see Europe for a moment. So imagine that this America was superimposed over this. And you have California, Arizona, Kansas is here in the middle. You've got New York up here. So it's the exact same thing. They're entirely separate countries. So if we go over to the United States, or it's not really called it's called the United States of America.
Right.
The term United States is incorrect. The term United States is only I'll show you more about that in a moment, but this is the same thing as Europe. Right. California is a country, Arizona is a country, Colorado is a country, Wyoming is a country, Idaho is a country, Oregon is a country, Montana is a country, South Dakota is a country, North Dakota is a country, Nebraska is a country, etc.
That's why prisoners need to be extradited to their state when they're arrested in the fleeing from another one.
Yes,
right?
That's So there's a lot of reasons for that and that kind of thing, right? So starting to get into just clear cut, what is the definition of United States, or where is the location of the United States? We have UCC 9-307. UCC stands for the Uniform Commercial Code. We're not going to get into this right now in great detail, but we have here location of United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia.
That little shitburg.
Yep.
That little ghetto-ass fucking city where all the corruption in the country likes to hang out and do terrible things. That's the United States.
And then we have 4 USC 71 as well, which is the second punch combo here.
Wow.
All that part of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the permanent seat of government of the United States. And then we can see further information on this at 4 USC 72. All offices attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere, except as otherwise expressly provided by law. And this starts to make perfect sense as to how they can remove cases from state court and put it into the federal court. Because anything that is attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere. So when they remove a case from state court to federal court, that's what they're doing. The problem is that the 48 states of the union are not offices attached to the seat of government. You can literally type it into Google, is state of California within the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of the national government? No.
No. Oh my God. The state of California is not within the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of the national government. So says AI overview from Google. California has ceded some of its jurisdiction to the federal government, but it retains other rights. I'm sure that applies to almost every state, right?
Except Hawaii and Alaska.
Except Hawaii and Alaska. Wow.
And then obviously the U.S. territories and insular possessions are also the same thing. They are not sovereign areas. So if you type in U.S. territories into Google and then you go to the Wikipedia article, it's a very good article, by the way.
Nice.
It says here, territories of the United States are sub-national administrative divisions and dependent territories overseen by the federal government of the United States. The American territories differ from the U.S. states and Indian reservations in that they are not sovereign entities.
Okay.
Now, Indian reservations are sovereign if they are not federally registered. They are not really sovereign if they are federally registered. And that's where we start getting into that definition we saw at 28 U.S.C. 1442 and a tribal court. It would have to be federally registered for it to be considered a tribal court where they can remove the case from the tribal court and put it in the federal court. Okay.
So is the tendency then do the tribes benefit more from not being federally registered if they have a reservation?
They get money, basically, if they're federally registered.
Of course, yeah.
So it just comes down to if they want to sell their soul for money, basically.
Yeah. I'm sure they throw a lot of it at them, just enough considering the poverty that they usually are dealing with. Yeah.
Exactly. And then here you have the list of the different U.S. territories. When were they acquired? Right around 1900. Location, are they incorporated? Are they unincorporated? Are they organized? Are they unorganized? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Trump's trying to add Greenland to this list.
Well, he's trying to make Canada the 51st state and all this.
He's tripping.
A lot of that stuff's not going to happen, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't think it was.
You can't. It's DC has been trying to be a state forever. That's never going to happen. 51st state. They have a whole website on this, and you can see some more information here. Pretty shocking. This is the statehood.dc.gov, state of Washington, D.C. They want to make it the 51st state. Never going to happen. They've been trying to do this forever. But check this out.
Because it would totally destroy everything that they have based all these things off of, right?
No, they answer that right here on this question.
Okay.
If D.C. becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government, monuments, and museums, right? This area is unpopulated. So what did I do? I went and filed a FOIA request to get, I can show this to you. I just got this a couple days ago on the 24th. Okay.
Oh, wow. Hot off
so
the
you
press.
can see, yeah. So you can see here on, this is my question that I asked on my FOIA request on statehood.dc.gov FAQ. There's a section entitled, if DC becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government, monuments, and museums? It says this area is unpopulated.
That's the fucking answer you got?
No. This is from the website.
Oh, okay.
See?
Yeah.
If DC becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government,
okay, yeah.
monuments? Just this part. If DC becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government? The federal seat of government is called United States. That's what they're talking about here in 4 U.S.C. 71. See, permanent seat of government, and then in the FAQ, federal seat of government. It's the same terminology. So if we go back to 4 U.S.C. 71 and read that again, all that part of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the permanent seat of government of the United States. And then it's called the United States. That thing is called the United States. So if D.C. becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the person called United States? Could be like another way of saying that, right?
Right.
Their answer is this area is unpopulated. So now we've gone even deeper. We know United States is somewhere in the District of Columbia. And now we know that the location of where this thing called United States is inside of the District of Columbia is in an area which is unpopulated. So Washington, D.C. is 10 square miles, and then there's only so many places in that 10 square miles that are unpopulated. So we're starting to get closer and closer to find out where is this thing called United States actually located.
Yeah.
So what I did is I wrote a FOIA request to try to find the location because I couldn't find anything even closer than that. So I say on here, this website says these things. So my question is, what is the exact location and coordinates of the federal seat of government, which is described as unpopulated? Octo responded with some horse shit, so I filed a appeal, which goes straight to the mayor's office. Mm-hmm. In my appeal, I say, I have ongoing litigation as well as litigation that I am building, and what is needed is the exact coordinates of the location of the national seat of government that is described in 4 U.S.C. 71. In UCC 9-307 subsection H, this juristic person called United States is described as being, quote, located in the District of Columbia, end quote, but I do not know the exact coordinates, which is what is needed. I'm attempting to use the DC Real Property Finder, and if I type, quote, United States, end quote, it directs me to a building on the southwest corner of Pennsylvania and 9th. I understand that I have been directed to a massive body of information that you guys have, but I have no idea where to start or how to verify the information. This is the basis for the appeal. If someone could please tell me the exact tool or program that I could use to successfully collect the above information, then I am able to actually acquire it, then this appeal would not be needed and I could simply cancel it. And if you scroll down, you will see that they basically just said, fuck you, we're not going to answer this question.
Oh, my God. Because they can't. I'm sure they can't answer it to a large degree, right? I mean,
probably.
But they just gave you like a bunch of fucking cases.
They either don't know or they won't, right? So if we go to the DC Real Property Finder, okay, and we're going to type in, we're going to go to the Real Property Finder. This is actually an app that you can use through the Washington, D.C. website, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go to the mapping of the Washington, D.C., and we're going to type in the words United States. And United States takes us to this building. It's literally this teeny, tiny, itty, micro little part of a building on the southwest corner of Pennsylvania and 9th Avenue.
Oh,
see it?
My God, yeah.
It's listed as a commercial office.
What the fuck? Wow.
So you can see it. We have to zoom in almost to the point where you can see the hairs on someone's face to be able to view this thing. Commercial office.
Welcome to the United States, everybody.
So this is, as far as I can tell, and you're talking to a guy who's been looking to try to find where the United States is for over 2 years.
Dude, you got to write a book, another book.
As of right now, oh look, is this latitude and longitude? Ooh, hold on a second. I think I just saw latitude and longitude. Let's get these numbers.
Scope it in.
On the bottom left, the numbers that are on the screen is 77.026 space 38.894 degrees. I'm not sure if that's the coordinates of the location we're currently looking at, but as of right now, this is my best guess as to the location of the juristic person called the United States. I looked up on Google Maps. I did a street view on this building. Let's go to Google Maps. And we're going to go to Pennsylvania and 9th Washington, D.C. There it is. And then we're going to go to Street View. Let's go to Street View. Wait a second. This is not what I wanted. How do you go back? Here we go. We're going to go to Pennsylvania. Where is 9th Street and Pennsylvania? Let's see if we can find it. Pennsylvania. Nice 9th Street. Oh, there it is. What the hell? So we're going to take our little guy. United States was right around here. So let's dump him right here in front. So as far as I can tell, this is the United States.
Wow. So we're looking at a big old school Capitol building on a street that looks pretty much abandoned, or what was the word they used? Unpopulated, or although there is a bus parked out front, probably a tourist bus. And yeah, virtually no people in the picture at all. Wow. I mean, it's a huge ass building, and it's one of those old school buildings, with the giant pillars.
The address that comes up for this location for our street view is 250 9th Street Northwest. For anyone that cares to drop a dude. And then if you go, let's see, if we go, it looks like, I can't quite tell, but it looks like it's open here. Mm-hmm. And then you can walk through the building, and then there's a courtyard or something maybe over there. You can see it. Yeah. Oh no, it's a parking thing. See it?
So, yeah, that's fucking. So, Brandon, is this a deliberate obfuscation? Is it, my question is, why and how in God's name did this get so completely was it deliberate, or were they just digging themselves this hole in order to finagle the law in a way that was completely deceptive and manipulative and would go under the radar? Why did they do this, and how did they get away with it?
I would say maybe, but the thing is that you'll read, if you look into the history of Samuel Freeman Miller, he wanted to help release the slaves, so he was already kind of pushing in that direction. And then obviously at the end of the Civil War, they were trying to figure all this out. If you go and read these slaughterhouse cases, there's not really any nefarious stuff in there.
Well, how did it get its name? Slaughterhouse.
It has to do with literally slaughterhouses. That's what started all this.
Okay.
So if we go back to what Samuel Freeman Miller was saying earlier, now it's going to start making a little bit more sense, okay? So he says earlier, remember I told you he's giving you a hint as to where the United States is? Mm-hmm. Let's read what he has to say again, right here. Those, therefore, who had been born and resided always in the District of Columbia or in the territories, though within the United States, were not citizens. So this whole thing of where United States is only and exclusively defined as the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories and insular possessions, and does not include 48 sovereign states of the Union, is very old. It's over 150 years old. This is not anything new in terms of the fact that the term United States does not include 48 states of the Union.
Wow.
Samuel Miller was saying that all the way back on April 14th or 18th or whatever it is of 1873. So what I'm teaching in this show is very old. It's not anything new. United States does not mean California, Utah, Texas, New York, Maine, Florida, North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Oregon, Montana.
That's
and
just what we're taught in school, along with an array of other falsifications, basically, right?
Yeah. So now we're going to go back to the first line of the 14th Amendment, and we're going to read it again, and we're going to see it's starting to actually fill out. We're about maybe halfway done with clearing up everything we have to clear up to understand this first line.
Okay.
I'm going to read it again, the original text, and then we're going to read it plugging in all the new definitions that we have now.
Okay.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, let's plug in the definitions of what we've figured out so far into the areas that we've already figured out. We'll still see there's still some holes here. We're going to clear up the rest of these.
Okay.
All released slaves of African descent, born or naturalized in the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the District of Columbia or any of its U.S. territories or insular possessions, and of the state wherein they reside.
Okay.
We still have to clear up the word state, and we still have to clear up the word reside. There's still a couple things that are missing here, okay? Mm-hmm. But as you can see, this is not anything like what anybody thinks it is anyway, including Trump. I don't dislike Trump. I'm just saying he has no clue what he's doing with this stuff. Not even. He's like 5,000 football fields away from anything close that could be even remotely related to anything.
I'm sure.
Now, I think he's doing a lot of other really cool things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But in terms of 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship and all this stuff, he's like five. I mean, everyone is 5 million miles away from the mark. So he's not unique or particularly dumb. He's just as bad as everybody else. But I'm just saying he's doing a lot of cool things, and there's a lot of cool things he is doing, and a lot of great things, and he's really gotten a hold of a lot of really cool things. But the birthright citizenship thing, he needs to dump that. It's never going to go anywhere because he has no clue what's going on. Okay?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Yeah, but tell me the coolest thing you think he's doing, by the way. Just what before you go on.
I like the fact that he's getting rid of the Department of Education. I like the fact that he's pounding everybody into dust. He's going into the IRS and he's getting rid of 15,000 people and they're sending out these emails and making everybody say what they're doing, and they're just I mean, just the fact that they're terrifying everybody is just good enough. I mean, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's I can't even imagine what most government employees are going through right now. Their little cushy bullshit jobs that they thought they could ride forever and then retire without doing anything sure is disappearing fast.
Yep. And
so you know, it's very cool. I like to see it. It's just
it is. You know, and look, it's if we're going to clean anything up, then it has to happen. You know, I had a friend write me the other day, and she said, you know, she teaches kids in Bali, and the parents are literally they just lost their jobs. They're going to have to leave, and she's like, is USAD that bad? I was like, yes. I was like, I'm sure those parents are good people, but you know, there are people who are working in the CDC who are good people and believe they're working towards a good cause, but it doesn't change the nature of the organization they work for. You know, I said, this is corrupt as corrupt can be, and then USAD is one of the most corrupt. So I was like, I'm sorry for your friends, you know, but it has to go. It's a detriment to the world.
Exactly.
So yeah. Anyway, let's keep going.
So the next sentence in the Slaughterhouse Cases, it's still Samuel Freeman Miller speaking. He says, and this is right after he just gave that line of the first line of the 14th Amendment. Right? We're gonna let's hear more about what he has to say about this whole thing. He says, the first observation we have to make on this clause, meaning the first sentence, the first section of the 14th Amendment, the one we just read again, is that it puts at rest both the questions which we stated to have been the subject of differences of opinion. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state. And it overturns the Dred Scott decision by making all persons born within the United States and subject to its jurisdiction citizens of the United States. that its main purpose was to establish the citizenship of the Negro can admit of no doubt. The phrase, quote, subject to its jurisdiction, end quote, was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, consuls, and citizens or subjects of foreign states born within the United States. So here's another piece of this first sentence that nobody knows.
Can
and
you
it's
put
right
that
here.
Paragraph in layman's terms, a little more digestible.
Yeah, so we're going to go over all this. We're going to break it down
Okay.
into multiple sections. We'll go over each section. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over this section. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state. Prior to these Slaughterhouse cases, there was no such thing as a United States citizen. There's literally endless cases where the Supreme Court's justices are saying it doesn't exist. People say it exists. It doesn't exist. It's not there. There are only people who are citizenship of a state. And the reason why is because all the states are independent countries.
Right.
In 1871, you have the Organic Act, which created the District of Columbia, the area that we know it as today. It shifted all of that and created new boundaries and created a whole new structure in that area. It's called the Organic Act of 1871. And then you also have this 14th Amendment. So what the 14th Amendment did, specifically when it was interpreted by the people in the Slaughterhouse cases, including Samuel Freeman Miller, he's saying it declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state. So what he's saying is that now there is this thing called a United States citizen. And in fact, you can be a United States citizen without ever having had a citizenship in a state, which is brand new. This is brand new. We are looking at when this change took place because the Dred Scott case said that can't happen. And that's why he says, and it overturns the Dred Scott decision. And then he goes into more information on that, right? Mm-hmm. So prior to April 18th or whatever, I don't want to go up on this because I want to keep it in that same zone. So let's find out what is the date on this. April 14th, 1873. So on April 14th, 1873, the United States citizen category was born. And it's an entirely different classification of citizenship besides the individual states. And it has nothing to do with the individual states. And you don't have to have any citizenship associated with any of the states in order to be a United States citizen. The problem is that what zones or areas, what rights, what powers does this new area called the United States and a citizen thereof have? And that's the issue, is that everybody's calling themselves a United States citizen. Now, that means that you've declared your allegiance to the District of Columbia and its U.S. territories and insular possessions.
But what does that mean?
That means that you're not an American. It means that you're a released slave after the Civil War of African descent.
So is that basically what we are?
Yes.
Wow.
So every time you hear the word U.S. citizen, or it's a term really, what should come to your mind is a black man in tattered clothes. He has the shackles still on his wrists and his ankles, but the chains have been broken. So the chains are just kind of hanging. He can move pretty freely, but he still has the shackles on his wrists and on his ankles, and he is physically located in the District of Columbia. Wow. If you get that picture, it's absolutely perfect. That's exactly what a U.S. citizen is.
God damn, that's fucking wild. People have no idea that is the true definition of a U.S. citizen right there.
That's correct. Wow. And we're going to get into how that relates to state citizenship. We're going to get into, all these different things as we move forward in the show. But you can see we're already 55 minutes into this, and we haven't even gotten off what is a citizen and where's the United States. We're still pretty much on those subjects.
Right.
And you can see how much is here. Right. So, when he says here, he says right here, literally. This line right here alone is so telling. Freeman Miller says that its main purpose was to establish the citizenship of the Negro.
Yeah.
Can admit of no doubt.
Wow.
Now, we saw that echoed, if we go back to Van Valkenburg, that first case I showed you.
Yeah.
Remember what Van Valkenburg said?
That was the first line of what he said, right?
No white person.
No white person, right. Wow.
No white person born within the limits of the United States, which means born within the limits of the District of Columbia and its U.S. territories and insular possessions, and subject to their jurisdiction, which we've already covered what that means. Remember, what did Samuel Miller say about subject to its jurisdiction? People have had, there's as many opinions about what that means as there are people who have read the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. Yeah. It's all bullshit. It's all noise. Mr. Miller has already given you the answer, and no one ever on any TV channel, news channel, broadcast, or politician has ever even come close to what it actually means. Freeman Miller says the following.
How could they? How could they?
How could they?
You can't say this on TV.
The phrase, quote, subject to its jurisdiction, end quote, was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, consuls, and citizens or subjects of foreign states born within the United States. Now, keep in mind, California would be a foreign state from United States. Utah would be a foreign state born. So if you're a citizen of Utah and you have a child in the District of Columbia, that would be excluded because it would be a citizen of a foreign state born within the United States. So if you're a citizen of Virginia and you're traveling in a car and your wife's in the car and all of a sudden her water breaks and you have to pull over into Washington, D.C. to have your child in a hospital,
help you. Yeah.
That child would not be a citizen of the United States.
But these days they would fudge it so it would be, right?
They would ask you and you would say yes.
Right. Right.
That's why do you think you've been asked 80 trillion times throughout your entire life, are you a U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
Why do they ask you that? Why don't they tell you that?
Yeah.
They never tell you that, ever.
No,
they ask you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into that in detail as well, because that's how it all works. They have to ask you. They can't tell you. That's the rules, right? So getting back into Van Valkenburg is very, very simple. White people have nothing to do with being a U.S. citizen. It's that simple.
That's fucking crazy.
And then you get into my personal favorite, 18 U.S.C. 911. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So, for example, if I said to anyone that I'm a U.S. citizen, in my mind, I'm going to prison for up to 3 years. Now, for anyone listening to this, you can relax because this word right here is the word that saves you, the word willfully. Yeah. So I'm going to read it again. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States will be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So prior to all of this information that I'm giving you, you were not willfully and falsely representing yourself as a citizen of the United States. But I think it's cool. You might not like it so much. I like it because it's going to press you and push you into correcting all of this and not acting like a released slave who's living in the District of Columbia of African descent. From this point forward, now the situation will be willful. So for anyone that's listening to this who decides they want to look into this more in great detail, you will realize very, very rapidly that from this point forward, to continue calling yourself a U.S. citizen now makes you a felon.
Wow.
You are not a U.S. citizen. If I say I'm a U.S. citizen anywhere, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to prison for up to 3 years. That means I can't have a driver's license.
Yeah.
That means I'm not voting. That means I canceled voter registration because that's fraudulent. That was a fraudulent activity. If we go to voter registration, we're going to see a lot more hints to all of this. Okay. Let's go to California voter registration. Okay. Now look at the options that you are given.
A U.S. citizen
when you sign up.
Member of the Uniformed Services or Merchant Marine on active duty, a U.S. citizen and an eligible spouse or dependent of a member of the Uniformed Services of the Merchant Marine, a U.S. citizen and advanced National Guard member, a U.S. citizen residing outside the U.S. temporarily, a U.S. citizen residing outside the U.S. indefinitely, and a U.S. citizen and have never resided in the U.S. What? Wow.
So obviously you can see from this, you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote.
Yeah.
Now, what's a U.S. citizen again?
Someone either born in D.C. or in one of the outlying territories, right?
Well, it's a released slave after the Civil War that was released through the 13th Amendment, and then was given special citizenship class because of their African blood and their African descent, they couldn't achieve any sort of citizenship. So it's a special kind of citizenship given to released slaves of African descent after the 13th Amendment.
Is that when birth certificates came out?
No, I believe birth certificates started around like the 1940s, 1950s. I could be wrong. I also believe it could be where they were around before that, but the system changed dramatically right around that time because the World Health Organization is actually the organization that redefined the term live birth. I don't know if you've ever seen. That's a really creepy definition. When did the World Health Organization define the term live
birth? They
birth?
should be defining the term for anything for any country. They're a fucking bunch of NGO terrorists. As far as I'm concerned.
So they created the definition for live birth in 1950, right? So if you when your original birth certificate is called a certificate of live birth, right? This is like the original birth certificate, and then they create the shorter abstract versions that most people have. You can actually still go out. I got mine from Indiana. You can actually call them up and you can actually ask specifically for the long form birth certificate. Yeah. It's also called the certificate of live birth, and it comes on legal paper.
Wow.
And it has your mom's original handwritten signature on it, which you don't see on the normal birth certificate. It has some other information as well, including some weird strings of numbers and all sorts of craziness, right? Yeah. Now, what is the legal definition of live birth? Very creepy. Very, 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 very creepy. Very creepy. You will see the same definition everywhere. Some of them have slightly different alterations, but they're pretty much the same. This is it right here. Live birth means the complete expulsion or extraction from its mother of a product of conception, irrespective of the duration of pregnancy, which, after such separation, breathes or shows any other evidence of life, such as beating of the heart, pulsation of the umbilical cord, or definite movement of voluntary muscles, whether or not the umbilical cord has been cut or the placenta is attached.
Wow.
So live birth could be just the umbilical cord by itself could be considered a live birth. Just the placenta by itself could be considered a live birth. Something that fell off during it that has any sort of breathing or heart beating or pulsation or definite movement of voluntary muscles could be considered a live birth. So you have to ask yourself, live birth of what?
Yeah.
What is the certificate of live birth referring to? Is it referring to the umbilical cord? Is it referring to the placenta? Is it referring to the baby's physical body? Is it referring to maybe some piece of the physical body that may have come off during birth or during something happening or whatever? I mean, if there's a cesarean section and there's a section of the umbilical cord that's actually cut off and it's like an extra piece to the side, would that piece be its own individual live birth?
Yeah.
And then, what does your mother do with things like the placenta and the umbilical cord? She has them disposed of.
Where she was born.
She doesn't need them, so what do? They take them and they dispose of them.
Mm-hmm.
So is she abandoning them or is she disposing of them?
Yeah.
And then, if you look on the certificate of live birth, your mother, the way that she's described as an informant. The line says mother or any other informant.
What?
Start going down that rabbit hole. What's an informant? So we start getting into some really creepy stuff with this, and you can also see more information on this. Then what does she do? Because then she gets the once the birth certificate is signed, what's typically the first thing that moms do is they go out and they get their kid a social security number, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then we start getting into who is eligible to get a social security number, and we start getting into that.
Before we move on to that, I want to make sure that we get into this, I know we're talking about it right now, the definition, live birth definition, but I'm wondering, when I filled out a form to get my baby a birth certificate, my babies, I was giving consent essentially to create a corporate avatar, if you will, for him, and that actually belongs as property to the government. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, and we're going to see more of that here in just a moment with the Social Security number. The Social Security number is going to shine a lot of light into that. In fact, just yesterday, I had a huge breakthrough on this, which we're going to cover in this show, brand new.
Okay.
So 20 CFR 422.104 is entitled, Who Can Be Assigned a Social Security Number? Now, before we get into that, real quick, what's the definition of the word person? This is becoming so well known that it's something I forget to even cover sometimes. But people need to understand the definition of the word person. The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. You're going to see all sorts of legal fiction type things listed whenever you see the word person. So there is no definition I've ever seen anywhere ever where the word person does not include partnerships, associations, companies, corporations, estates, trust, etc. When you start going into Title 49, they even list railroads is literally part of the definition of the word person. So the word person means all sorts of shit. So you got to keep that in mind when you're looking at all this, right?
Okay.
So who can be assigned a Social Security number? Persons eligible for SSN assignment. We can assign you a Social Security number if you meet the evidence requirements in 422.107 and you are 1, a United States citizen, 2, an alien lawfully admitted, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you look, the word you has a special definition. We're going to click that. This is pretty fucking wild.
Oh my God.
The term you is specially defined in a different section, which is 20 CFR 422.402. The definition of you, which is used in that section, is defined as the following. You means an individual who owes a debt to the United States within the scope of this subpart.
Jesus Christ.
So if we go back to 20 CFR 422.104, who can be assigned a Social Security number? We can assign anyone who has a debt to the United States a Social Security number if anyone who has a debt to the United States meets the evidence requirements in 422.107. And that debtor is the following.
Wow.
That's reading this in English.
That's huge.
Then we go to the tax code, 26 CFR 301.7701-11. This is the brand new piece that we just got, I think, yesterday that's just absolutely unbelievable. The term Social Security number means the taxpayer identification number of an individual or a state. So the term Social Security number and the term tax identification number mean the same thing. The term Social Security number and the term employer identification number mean exactly the same thing. So if we go to the SS4 form, which is the actual form that you use to get an EIN number from the IRS, we find another huge hint, huge breakthrough. If we go down to type of entity in section 9A, we find out that the Social Security number, which is just simply a tax identification number, is used specifically for a type of business called a sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
Then we go to the IRS website and we find out what is a sole proprietorship. That's what the Social Security number is talking about. So what the hell is it? A sole proprietor is somebody who owns an unincorporated business by themselves. So when you use your name in all capital letters, Brandon Joe Williams, for example, if you get a job and you fill out a W-9 form and it's got your name listed in all capital letters, they're referring to a sole proprietorship.
Right.
So the first question you have to ask yourself is, where in the hell did this unincorporated business come from? Did you open it?
Yeah. Yeah. How did I suddenly fucking become a business owner when all I did was fill out my name?
How is your name a business? Where did it come from? How long has it been there? And who gave it to you?
My God, I never even thought of that. I fill out those forms all the time to get, like social media, like ad payments. And I'm just like, they'll just put my name in and they're like, would you like to use your taxpayer identification number or your Social Security? I'm like, Social Security, it's easier. Bang, same thing.
That's correct. And when you give someone a Social Security number, the IRS has already told you that points to and is in reference to a sole proprietorship. Not you.
Right.
Not you.
A fucking sole proprietorship, a business.
It's a business.
Yeah. Wow.
The SSN is a tax identification number for a business called a sole proprietorship, which has the exact same name as you.
Oh my God. Wow.
And I know a lot of people say straw man and they say this and they say that. Well,
yeah, why do they say that? I don't.
It took me 2 years to figure all this out. So this is it. This is like, I can go into a court of law and this is all proven. This is a done deal.
Yeah.
I've literally shown you on the screen. The audio people are going to need to go look at the video version if they can.
Yeah.
But I've literally shown you on the screen all the evidence to show you that the Social Security number is a tax identification number specifically for a business called a sole proprietorship.
Right.
That sole proprietorship, if you go down the rabbit hole of what a sole proprietorship is, it's just your name. If you do Brandon Joe Williams painting, it's not a sole proprietorship anymore. And you'll see that more and more and more as you dig into this. If you go on to Google Scholar and start looking up case law and cases where they're talking about the sole proprietorship, it's a very unique kind of business. There's even like tax cases where the defense was sued as a sole proprietorship, and they actually used the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and the judges actually sided with the defendant.
Wow.
So the sole proprietorship is a unique, very special, very different type of business, and essentially, it's considered that the owner of the sole proprietorship and the sole proprietorship itself is essentially the same person unless you specifically say it's not.
Right. So essentially, you're saying that through some, you could call it clever legalese, the quote, federal government has essentially hoodwinked us all into participating in a system of complete oppressive taxation that is actually voluntary, unbeknownst to 99.9% of the population.
They give everyone a Starbucks, and then they basically trick everyone into saying, I am Starbucks.
Wow.
So
and then it becomes legally binding because they don't realize that they have literally signed up for it, agreed to it, right?
Well, the craziest thing is that when you realize that it's all based off of your infinite ability to contract, it's literally based off of your infinite freedom. Your infinite freedom is why this can happen. That's the craziest thing about it.
When you really unpack it all, that's the truth of the matter, is that
you have infinite freedom, and you infinitely freedomed yourself into this.
That makes perfect sense with the fucking world as I understand it right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
The government has not oppressed you into literally anything ever.
They've basically just given you the right obstacle course to run blindfolded, essentially, to let you do it yourself.
That's correct.
Yeah. Wow.
So the next thing we got to get into to sort of understand this whole sole proprietorship in better detail and to sort of fill it out in terms of its legality and in terms of its specifics and in terms of what it is and how it works is we're going to be looking at in California. For those that are not aware of this, it's a really great place to bring all this up because it's very, very easy to prove this in California. And the reason why is because all state taxes are paid to what is called the Franchise Tax Board. For anyone who's ever been in California, they will be very, very, they will have very unfond memories of the FTB and the Franchise Tax Board. They are known to be very, very aggressive, very difficult to work with, and very, very crazy, right? So what is a franchise and what is a franchise tax? Franchise is a special privilege conferred by government on individual or corporation and does not belong to citizens of country generally or of common right. A franchise is a privilege or immunity of a public nature which cannot be legally exercised without a legislative grant. To be a corporation is a franchise. I'm not saying that from my own head. I'm actually reading that right from the legal definition.
Yes,
to be a corporation is a franchise. And the word is italicized, trying to give. So if I were to read this as though the person who wrote it intended, it would be read like this. To be a corporation is a franchise. That would be the exact way this would be read aloud.
They don't want you confused about that at all.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So if we go down to franchise tax, a tax on the franchise of a corporation, that is, on the right and privilege of carrying on business in the character of a corporation for the purposes for which it was created and in the conditions which surround it. So when you're in California and you're paying state tax, you're paying it to the Franchise Tax Board. Here it is.
Wow.
When you pay state taxes to the franchise tax board in just your name in all capital letters, they're telling you that your name in all capital letters is a fucking business.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
This doesn't, it took me a long time to piece this all together in a way that isn't like sounding like a crazy person. Like really, how do I take all this information and prove it in a short period of time using like really simple, easy examples so basically, if you want to like boil down my whole platform in a nutshell, it's basically like just me preparing for years and years and years for like the biggest lawsuit that's ever going to fucking happen on the planet, basically. If you really want to, because I'm always trying to tie things down and think about juries and evidence. And once I get this in front of a jury, how would I piece it together? Do I have circumstantial evidence, direct evidence? How can I get direct evidence? If it is circumstantial, I need a lot more of it. You see?
Yeah.
So it's all the same. It's all the same stuff, but you're starting to see that I've gotten pretty good at filling this all out in a simple way.
Yes, you have.
It's a fucking franchise.
It's a fucking franchise is right. It's a fucking hoodwink is what it is. I mean, it's like, how can you not call it nefarious? It seems absolutely designed for one purpose, and that is to bleed and use the people of this country dry in every way possible, without them realizing that's what they're doing, Yeah,
and the basis of all of this, the true basis of all of this is the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, which gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations, among states, and with the Indian tribes.
Right.
That's the exact quote from the Commerce Clause, right? Congress has often used the Commerce Clause to justify exercising legislative power over the activities of states and their citizens, leading to significant and ongoing controversy regarding the balance of power between federal government and the states.
Yep, we saw that come out in 2020 with the the lockdowns and all those things, with states fighting the government and Florida doing its own thing, and Georgia and a few other states were like, no. And they seem to have won out, which is good.
And the term that's used to describe the power of Congress under the Commerce Clause is the term plenary power.
Plenary.
And we can see here on the screen, Cornell explains plenary power as the following. Complete power over a particular area with no limitations. This term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without permission of Congress. Okay. So if Congress only has unmitigated power over commercial activities, how did they fix the problem?
They
gave you a business.
That's right. That's the only thing.
They gave you a business. It's called a sole proprietorship. And and you're identifying as though you are that business. They say, okay, fine, you can identify with whatever you want. That now means I have plenary power over you.
Do you think that Congress is in any way aware of this, or they're just fucking clueless like they are with everything?
Nowadays, I think they're clueless, but I don't know if at one point in the past, for example, like Dave Champion is the guy that I got this off of, this piece right here. He's the author of Income Tax, Shattering the Myths. Mm-hmm. He thinks that Congress knows all of this.
Wow, really?
And there is a lot of wording. Every time they talk about the United States, they're always like talking about Guam and Puerto Rico and all this kind of stuff. So he thinks that they know.
That's fucking scary. If they
I
actually
think
know.
they don't know, and I think somebody else is writing all this shit. Personally,
who's behind this? Do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah,
probably. The World Health Organization is the one who wrote the definition for live birth.
Yeah.
So the World Health Organization is part of the United Nations. So
we know who created that entity, and who paid for it, and who gave the land for it, and what it's designed for. At least most of my listeners will know the the quote conspiracy, and it's not a theory. If you know where to look, you can confirm that easily.
Correct.
But, yeah. Wow. That's fucking, what a fucking swindle, man. You know,
So now
like,
we're going to get into how does location work. We're starting to see the bigger picture here, right?
Okay.
Here's another little thing that came up recently that was pretty shocking. The term doing business, you can see it on the screen here. Like doing business as. Doing business, that term legally only has to do with foreign corporations.
wow.
So when you say you're doing business as, what you're saying is that I am actually a foreigner of California. I'm in California as a foreigner. I actually don't have citizenship with California. I don't live here. I'm just here as a corporation from a foreign land.
Wow.
That's what doing business stands for. Doing business as means a foreigner who's coming here as a foreign corporation to do business as this particular name.
Wow. Wow.
So doing business is also a term that has nothing to do with almost anyone, unless you're a Chinese company and you have and you're bringing your Chinese conglomerate to California or something like that.
Yeah.
In that case, that would be the term you'd use, doing business as. But if you are just working by yourself, or if you live in California and you open up a little shop, or if you have a place where you're selling something or whatever, and you don't have some big, huge conglomerate, like for example, let's say you owned like Blockbuster or something back in the day, wherever the headquarters is, you would not be doing business in that state, but
Right.
you would be doing business in all of the other 47 states of the Union. And then if you were also doing business in the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions, then you'd also be doing business in the United States.
So it's like, it just begs the question, like, why? What, like, so, you know, you talk about how soul crushing it is, especially for those, you know, who actually have served our country, to kind of realize that they've actually been serving a very parasitic corporate entity. And, you know, it reminds me in many ways of the dangers that my two-time guest, David Icke, has been trying to warn us about in his books and in his
Yes.
speeches for decades. You know, he's been with me a couple times now when we talk about these dark forces that are controlling not just the United States, but the global civilization itself. And I'm wondering, you know, how far and how deep does this go for you? Like, does it start and end with simple commercial greed? I mean, because I think that in a nutshell it does, but are there greater forces at work? And like, let's go far out a little bit. You know, do you think that there are non-human influences and entities at play, or maybe they possibly were? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know a lot of answers for you.
We see that reflected in some of these families that are coming up over and over, like the families that tend to start with the letter R.
Yes.
I can think of a few
Yes.
of them. And, you know, speaking of robots, people are obviously very concerned that the parasite class wants to use AI now to turn humanity
Yes.
into a permanent slave class, right? And the globalist transhumanists have they've been very vocal about their plans for us. They're not hiding for those of us paying attention. But their plan doesn't include living conscious beings at all. You know, they're collecting our data essentially so they can create digital emulates of us. And they're substituting AI for, you know, trying to substitute AI for genuine consciousness. And it's not hard to see why, because actual humans need resources. We need food and shelter, bathroom breaks, vacation time, stuff like that. So if I'm a corporation with a digital copy of you, like capable of simulating every thought and every sensation that a natural body has, there's no need for me in any way, right? I mean, like, so to your knowledge, do we have existing provisions in the law that pertain to this idea or this completely uncharted and new territory that we're entering? Like, are we, as natural persons, going to be able to do anything about this shit storm that's coming?
So I went into the Instagram AI or one of the AI contracts, and I was reading it, and I found this in the contract. Point number 7. The subtitle for point number 7 is persona. This is the text. I'm going to read it exactly. This is from my phone. For the people who are going to be on the video, you're not going to see this. It's from my phone. To the extent your creator AI agent, including in connection with your use thereof, captures or reflects your name, image, likeness, voice, performance, movements, personal characteristics, gestures, facial expressions, or mannerisms, and then in parentheses it says your, quote, persona, end quote, and the word persona is capitalized. You hereby grant to Meta the non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable through multiple tiers, royalty-free, fully paid up worldwide right to use your persona in connection with the use of the Creator AI tool to A, generate, publicly display, and perform your Creator AI agent, B, make any promotional uses of your Creator AI agent in connection with the Creator AI tool and related services consistent with your privacy and application settings and our privacy policies, and C, otherwise provide the Creator AI tool and services.
Wow. So basically they're saying we reserve the right, and you've agreed to the right of us
Recreating your entire personality.
Yeah, and using, a deep fake AI version of you to do or say whatever the fuck they decide is going to be the most profitable for them. And you can't do shit about it. They have all rights to the royalties. And as a content creator with a personality, I can tell you that is some fucking bullshit right there, like that most people don't really probably need to be concerned about. But, for those of us who have a voice and a following, that is some fucking really scary shit. And I can't believe that is just right there in their policy. And
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
sure
use
they're not
AI.
alone.
After reading that, I don't use any of it.
I don't ever use it either. I know people use it all the time, but I never got into it, and I don't trust it. As fascinating as some of the answers can be, it's not AI. It's a fucking souped up algorithm. People just are desperate for interaction with what they think is like this superior entity. I mean, they should just try talking to God, I think. But, AI,
a superior entity that was created by who?
Exactly. Those families that start with the fucking letter R. You know what I mean? Like that.
No. We humans created it.
Yeah, I know.
Just normal ass fucking people, little nerdy dudes.
It's an
and
extension
little
of
computer
consciousness.
Programming nerds are the ones that created AI.
Right. I guess I'm
So
referring to
we're
the
worshiping
parameters.
a god that we created.
Yeah. And it's an extension of consciousness is all it is. It should be a tool, but human beings are so fucking spiritually retarded, for lack of a better word, that they don't see it like that. It's been aggrandized and made crazy with the movies, and it's nuts to me because I don't have the fear that everyone has of it, that most people I talk to have of it. I understand the concern, but I don't have the fear because in the end, just fucking pull the plug. I mean, right? I mean, in the end, we have the power. It is an extension of us. So I don't know. It's a fucking crazy world we live in.
Well, for me, I was going to share this just rapidly. I don't really want to get off on all of this right now because I want to keep going on our legal discussion. But for example, like I said earlier, the whole multiple lifetimes, stuck in an incident, right? So if you go online and you type in antisocial personality Scientology into Google, you'll see this various articles that are entitled the antisocial personality. And there's 12 particular traits that these kinds of psychotic individuals that are stuck on the track, we call it stuck on the track. There's 12 particular characteristics that will allow you to spot these kinds of people because they're really hard to spot. And we'll just go through some of these real quick.
Okay.
He or she speaks only in very broad generalities. They say, everyone thinks, everyone knows you're an idiot. Everyone says this. Experts have told me this. Various doctors have told me that you're crazy. That's how they talk all the time.
Right.
So if you have someone around you and they talk like that, chances are it's possible they could be one of these very hard to spot psychotic individuals. Plus, when they use that all the time on you, it makes it really hard because it gets you so lost and confused as to what's really going on that even it actually smoke screens even seeing that they're the one actually creating all of it, right?
Yeah. And I saw a lot of that when the 2020 quote health crisis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're the ones behind all the media, so that's obvious, right?
Yeah.
Number 2, such a person deals mainly in bad news, critical or hostile remarks, invalidation, and general suppression. Gossip, bearer of evil tidings, rumor mongerer. Again, the whole media, right?
Yeah.
Here's another one that you can use to actually test these people. This is a great way to actually test them to see if they're psychotic. The antisocial personality alters to worsen communication when he or she relays a message or news. Good news is stopped, and only bad news, often embellished, is passed along.
I know.
So if there's anyone around you and you want to actually test them, you can actually tell them, tell Bob I really enjoyed the pizza he made for me last week. Just make something up and
see the message that
see
gets
what
over.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
I do that. I used to do that kind of stuff to people and stuff. And if they don't ever pass it along, wait a week and then tell them, hey, let Bob know that I'm really pissed off about his project that he's doing for me last week, and he needs to fucking straighten up or he's going to get fired, and then see if they'll pass that one along or embellish it.
Yeah.
Really powerful, right? A characteristic and one of the sad things about an antisocial personality is that it does not respond to treatment or reform. So the problem with this kind of personality is they're at war with everyone and everything all the time from the day they're born till the day they die. You can't really treat them.
Yeah.
They're so psychotic that you can't even really touch them, right? They won't allow it, right? Surrounding such a personality, we find cowed or ill associates or friends who, when not driven actually insane, are yet behaving in a crippled manner in life, failing, not succeeding, etc.
Wow.
This is a really fascinating one. The antisocial personality habitually selects the wrong target. If a tire is flat from driving over nails, he or she curses a companion or non-causative source of the trouble. If the radio next door is too loud, he or she kicks the cat.
Confused, yeah.
Here's another one that's really kind of weird that you can use to spot these people. The antisocial cannot finish a cycle of action. So a cycle of action is like you start something, you're working on it, and then you complete it.
Yeah.
They cannot complete anything. So they begin it, they continue it, and then they never finish it. And they become surrounded with incomplete projects. And the reason why this is, if you start getting into it deeper and deeper and deeper, is they have no concept of time because they've never moved. They're still 40 trillion years ago, September 30th, 6:08 p.m. They're still in that same exact second forever. They've never moved. Time doesn't exist to these people.
Wow. Yeah.
Antisocial persons will freely confess to the most alarming crimes when forced to do so, but will have no faintest sense of responsibility for them. Things just happened.
Wow. Yeah.
My hand just did it or something.
Right. Or I don't know what happened. It just happened to me. This is mind-blowing. All this information is completely mind-blowing, man. And I love the fact that you have honed this presentation down to something that like anyone can study, digest, and begin to understand what has happened, and what is happening, and at least have a general idea of how hoodwinked we've been, And it's like, obviously you're not the first person to begin to try to showcase this, there's been pioneering work by guys like G. Edward Griffin and Mel Stamper, and it's, people have a hard time validating these concepts, though. And you have, even just in this last hour and a half, you have shown the way for everyone listening. You're going to have to check out the video so that you can see exactly how he has gone about validating, these concepts. But it is like the internet doesn't really want you to know. And I'm just wondering, so for people who are looking to learn more, looking to, become what you could call somewhat of more of a free agent in this society we're living in, let's call it that. Where would you tell them to look? Where can they?
Well, I want to just round out, go back to this last part of the last discussion we were having, just round that out just a few minutes, if you don't mind.
Go for it, brother.
So I'm going to go ahead and end off on this. If people want to see more, there's a few more antisocial personality traits that they can look up for themselves. It's pretty simple, right? But I wanted to go back and just end off on one really, really important part, because we're kind of missing this last piece of the puzzle in terms of what they were saying on the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. The difference between domicile and residence. So we're in Black's Law right now. We're going to look this up. Domicile and residence, I'm reading from Black's Law. Domicile and residence, however, are frequently distinguished in that domicile is the home, the fixed place of habitation, while residence is a transient place of dwelling. If you'll notice, everything is residence. On the media, on the news, they use the word persons and they use the word residence, resident or residence. Persons, it includes, you got to think, it's not we the persons on the Constitution, is it? No. It's we the people, right? People is involving men and women. Persons is estates, partnerships, trusts, corporations, etc. Domicile means your actual home. Residence means a temporary location, but you don't actually really live there. You intend to return to your domicile. Now, if we go back to voter registration in California and we read this sentence, all of a sudden we have an oh my God, holy shit moment. A U.S. citizen and a resident of California, let's read this in English, a released slave after the Civil War of African descent living in the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions, and is a transient individual inside of a foreign state that has nothing to do with the United States, called California. And that's why you have to pay state tax. If you say you're a U.S. citizen and a resident of California, you aren't actually a citizen of California. You're a foreigner doing business in California through a sole proprietorship.
That's why it's set up that way.
That's why it's set up that way. Wow. Your citizenship has nothing to do with California. Your citizenship is with the District of Columbia, its U.S. territories and insular possessions. You are a foreigner in a foreign land of which you have no citizenship, called California.
That's why you got to pay.
That's why you got to pay. And if you go into, I actually have a court case, we just found this, just to give one little last tidbit.
Sure.
Absolute. Now, this is not a piece of case law that establishes precedent. This is actually just called persuasive authority. It didn't go high enough in the courts to create precedent, but it's very telling. The only absolute and unqualified right of citizenship is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. A citizen cannot be either deported or denied reentry. So what does that mean? A U.S. citizen, which is an African descent slave released after the Civil War, the only absolute and unqualified right of a U.S. citizen is to basically temporarily locate themselves, not as a domicile, but essentially as a transient inside of the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions. So you wonder why you need a business license to have a business. You wonder why you need a driver's license to drive a car, which we're not going to get into. It's a long presentation. You wonder why you need a permit to get a firearm, even though the Second Amendment says nothing about firearms. It's it's the protection of your right to bear arms.
Right.
You start looking up the definition of the word arms in Black's Law. It includes anything that someone takes up in their hands for defense or offense. So even a 2x4 would be considered an arm. Right. A sword would be considered an arm. A dagger would be considered an arm. A machine gun would be considered an arm. A dagger would be considered an arm. A syringe would be considered an arm if you were using it to attack somebody. Right. Anything that's picked up and used by the hand is considered an arm as per the legal definition. So why is it that you need permits to buy a firearm when the term firearm has nothing to do with the word arm? It all comes down to the fact that you told them that you're a citizen of a place that has nothing to do with the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution doesn't apply for U.S. citizens.
Wow. Damn.
That's why there's two different police forces. There's the police and the sheriffs. The sheriffs is the actual state law enforcement. The police is specifically and only for the District of Columbia, U.S. territories and insular possessions, and then people who are working as employees of the federal government in foreign enclave zones. So the police are basically roaming around. The only jurisdiction they have to police is people who list themselves as U.S. citizens, which is basically everyone.
Yeah.
So what happens is the whole country operates as though it's in the District of Columbia.
Wow.
And that's via 4 U.S.C. 72. 4 U.S.C. 72 states, all offices attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere except as otherwise expressly provided by law. Everyone has basically unintentionally attached themselves to the seat of government, so everything is exercised as though it's in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere.
God damn. Brandon, would you be willing to do this again with me, and will just focus on the different solutions and different ways that this can be navigated that most people have no idea, and the pros and cons of that. I'm a little low on time, and I'm a little low on my pain tolerance is running low. For everyone watching, I've been squirming. Most of you know I had a surgery on my derriere not long ago, and then complications with that. So I'm still dealing with a lot of residual healing and a little bit of pain. So I'm sorry about all the squirming. If you're watching,
I wasn't even looking because I was looking on my. So I just want to wrap up. I just want to reread the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, and then we're done. Is that okay?
Absolutely, brother.
So
as long as you agree to come back.
Of course, definitely.
Okay.
Awesome. Anytime.
You're the man.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So again, all black slaves of African descent released after the Civil War, born or naturalized in the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meaning they aren't some sort of like consul, they aren't a citizen of a state, they aren't a citizen of Virginia, are citizens of the District of Columbia and its U.S. territories and insular possessions, and of the state wherein they are transient but not actually a citizen of. As you can see, it's very complicated. No one's been able to figure it out since 1871. That is the exact definition of everything they are saying in this sentence. And the thing that nobody realizes is it has almost nothing to do with literally anyone.
My God. It's mind-blowing, man. This information is completely mind-blowing. Brandon, tell everyone where they can find you. I know you're very busy working. So, if you're on social media or people want to learn more and check out, you have a website, how can they find you?
onestupidfuck.com.
I love it. I love it, bro. And I love King Pickle fuck, His Excellency.
Yes.
That's your description here for my listeners.
I add a lot of humor into everything for two reasons: to protect myself from being attacked by the media. I knew it was probably coming one day, and then also because people get really pissed and they want to start firebombing government buildings when they learn this stuff, and I'm trying to prevent that as best I can. Those are the two reasons why. And plus, it's just really heavy to study this stuff.
It
and
is.
if you don't lighten it up, it's not pleasurable.
No,
sometimes,
and you do a great job with it, man. Your presentation's awesome. I love your sense of humor as well. I enjoyed the podcast I watched with you, with Alec, and the other appearances you made, and I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely do a sequel, and we'll get into some of the ways that people can begin to navigate this treacherous landscape. But I appreciate your time, brother. I appreciate you bearing with me as I squirmed around. I know you were very busy with your presentation, so hopefully you didn't notice too much. It didn't distract you.
No, I'm all good. As long as you're all good, I'm good.
I'm good, brother. I appreciate the time very much. I'll keep you posted when this is going to come out. If you're interested in watching it.
Oh, I definitely will. I'll definitely review this, and I know how Riverside works. If you stop the recording, I have to kind of hang out for a minute because it has to upload.
Yeah, you're about 90. You're at 99%, so we should be. Won't take too long. But
cool.
All right, brother. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Take care.